All right, live and direct and back with another installment of Warfare Studies. Lesson 4. What's Lesson 4 talking about? Lesson 4 examines how wars are ended, how peace is kept, and how stability is maintained in fragile spaces. This lesson also completes the student's examination of just war theory, introducing the newer concept of just post bellum. The lesson objectives include describe the key concepts and issues involving conflict resolution and war termination, and that's to the level of understanding. Describe the challenges of translating military victory into successfully achieving political objectives in the post conflict stability phase. That's also at the understanding level. Okay, looks like I have temporarily. Okay, here we go. Lesson 4 is talking about war termination and stability operations. Could I have but a line a century, hence crediting a contribution to the advance of peace, I would gladly yield every honor which has been accorded me in war. General Douglas MacArthur, 1880 1964. This guy could have been an emperor or um, a warlord or a dictator if, if things would have went a little bit different. But yeah, he's a hero. The object of war is a better state of peace, even if only from your own point of view. Word. B.H. Liddell Hart, military historian and strategist, 1895 through 1970. The loser is always unhappy. Rarely, the whole point of getting into a war was you had two people that their desires conflicted. And so, as a result of this conflict, because it couldn't be worked out through peaceful means, they said, all right, let's take it to war. And so, after the war concludes, and you get to a point where you're going to be figuring out what is peace and what does peace look like, it's never going to look good to the loser. It never does. Most princes apply themselves to the arts of war instead of to the good arts of peace. Sir Thomas More, English statesman and humanist, 1478, 1535. That is a long time ago. Japanese surrender at Tokyo Bay, 2 September 1945. And in this picture, it's a black and white picture. It looks like there's some foreign armies that are present. Everybody's standing at attention, and then there's this old school microphone, and it looks like I don't know. I think that's General Douglas MacArthur in the front, and then I cannot remember um, the Japanese general's name. But he's signing the papers, and everyone is just kind of standing there triumphantly um, as he signs the document to conclude or surrender. I read somewhere where the military is only able to surrender, but the whole thing of peace is brought about by legislative bodies. I think I heard that somewhere. Maybe I saw it on a YouTube video. I'm not sure. War termination includes stability operations. Stabilization is the process by which military and non military actors collectively apply various instruments of national power to address drivers of conflict, foster host nation resiliencies, and create conditions that enable sustainable peace and security. Despite coming at the tail end of or after wars, these operations often prove far more challenging than the wars themselves. There are a multitude of complexities involved in successfully stopping fighting and stabilizing a region where, due to war, stability has likely been long absent. This often proves exceptionally challenging for members of the United States Armed Forces because these operations call for them to take on roles outside the purely military realm. All Phase 4 operations involve the transition from a state of conflict to one of peace and stability, which accordingly broadens efforts from the military instrument of power to the diplomatic, economic, and informational ones. And so, if you notice, DMEI or DIME, um, I, dime field is something that I've seen. I can't remember what it means, but diplomatic, um, informational, military, and economic. These are phases or transitions or another of operations. Um, Never mind, don't worry about that. Despite the difficulty involved, there's perhaps no more critical skill set within the armed forces than the ability to translate military success or the reimposition of order into a peaceful and stable end state. Without it, all other skills within the military realm are pointless. Wars are a matter of policy, and if one wants to achieve policy's goals, one must be able to translate war into peace. And they said for the military, it's easier to make war than it is to make peace. Very interesting. War termination. It is not enough to win a war, it is more important to organize the peace. Aristotle, Greek philosopher, 384 323 BC. Only its glory determined its actions, and since it could not imagine itself existing without commanding, no hope or fear could induce it to make a peace it did not impose. Montesquieu on Ancient Rome, French political philosopher. A United Nations peacekeeper standing watch on the streets of Sarajevo in 1995. There's a blue helmet, the UN blue helmet, and I would hate to be in this force. He's got a gun and everything on his side. He's holding it in his hand. It's a M4 probably. I'm not sure honestly. I don't know which weapons they use. If the army brings their own weapons or if the UN has weapons that it uses, I'm not sure. But yeah, there you go. Stability activities often come once formal conflict has ended. These activities often prove far more challenging than offensive elements of an operation. There are a multitude of complexities involved in successfully stabilizing a region where, due to war, stability has long been absent. This often proves exceptionally challenging for members of the. I just read that. Wait, is that a. That can't be the same. No, I read that already. I did. This often proves exceptionally challenging for members of the United States Armed Forces because these operations call for them to take on roles outside the purely military realm. According to JP 3-0, the term stability activities encompasses various military missions, tasks, and activities conducted outside the U.S. in coordination with other instruments of national power to maintain or reestablish a safe and secure environment and to provide essential governmental services, emergency infrastructure reconstruction, and humanitarian relief. And most of the time, it's paid for by the loser. Wars may end in total victory, whereby an opponent is completely devoid of the means to resist and is subject to a peace of the victor's making. Yet, such instances are rare. More often, the belligerents retain some military capacity to the end. The use of force is therefore aimed at altering the opposing side's decision-making calculus and affecting its sense of costs and benefits of continuing to fight. This bargaining process is often capped by a formal ending of military operations in a political instrument, such as an armistice or a peace treaty. War termination marks the end of one state of affairs, the end of violence, and a transition to peace and normal international relations. So after the war is over, we get on with the charade. Now, if you lost and you're not happy with it, you're still expected to get on with it. I really want to study how Japan was able to operate after World War II because I'm still confused today of how a nation that was bombed, the only nation that was bombed by a nuclear bomb, is now allied with the nation that bombed them. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense for me. I don't think the U.S. would be bombed by a nation and then down the road be allies with that nation. And that's weird to me. Required materials. Schwab, World War One and the Rise of Hitler, 2014. Read pages 864 through 879. The Peace of Versailles was one of the world's historical events of the 20th century. Schwab, a distinguished historian, draws attention to the contradictions of peace as well as its role in creating the conditions in which Hitler rose to power and the world went to war once again. So this is probably a valuable piece of reading because it talks about how the attempts at peace backfired because clearly they backfired with the rise of Hitler. World War One didn't go Germany's way, or it didn't go as they planned, and they came back in World War Two, and it also didn't go as planned. To learn more, Tierney, Mastering the Endgame of War, 69 through 94. This article examines the complexity involved in bringing a conflict to a successful conclusion, especially given the uncertainties involved in war. How does Tierney's discussion relate to the larger conceptual arguments of Clausewitz? What about Sun Tzu? I noticed there were no points to ponder on the first one. That's interesting. Seems like a mistake. Conflict resolution and stability. The ballot is stronger than the bullet. Oh, the ballot is stronger than a bullet. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, said that. But I feel like Malcolm X or Martin Luther. That probably was Malcolm X. Let me see. Do a quick check. I feel like Martin Luther King did not say that. Malcolm X. Ballot. Let me see. Oh, there it is. That's what I thought. Malcolm X. The Ballot or the Bullet is the title of a public speech by human rights activists. Oh, I like how they refer to them as human rights, not civil rights. Interesting. What's the difference between human rights and civil rights? In the speech, which was delivered on April 3rd, 1964 at Corey Methodist Church, what did Malcolm mean by the ballot or the bullet? It's an influential speech empowering the black community to fight the control of the white man by using the ballot or the bullet. Malcolm X uses the white man metaphorically because he is not referring to the friendly white neighbor living next door. USC upstate? Oh, I don't agree with that, but okay. All right. Uh, Conflict resolution may be generally defined as a process of attempting to resolve or settle the root causes of conflict between various parties. It may occur in many settings, ranging from settling quarrels among neighbors to reconciling ethnic hatreds in the society to establishing peaceful relations between two warring states. Military members will often become involved in conflict resolution when a military victory has created an environment where the parties involved have terminated their military conflict and now prefer the process of conflict resolution over continuing the conflict. The military may also support conflict prevention activities in a crisis situation in order to forestall the outbreak of actual hostilities. In either case, the military conducts stability activities primarily to provide a secure environment for enduring conflict resolution to take place. Resolving the conflict, however, also requires the civilian sector to lead in rebuilding or even creating indigenous law enforcement capabilities, judicial systems, and governmental institutions. This sounds like a puppet government. Effective conflict resolution necessitates the construction or repair of both the infrastructure and the private enterprise sector, whose production will be the engine of sustainable growth and stability. Conflict resolution is particularly challenging for the United States because it requires time and an integrated whole of government approach. The figure below represents the weight of effort that are prescribed for the various activities undertaken during a joint combat operation. While reviewing this model, consider the following. Given what you've just read, does this model seem accurate to you? How does the weight of effort behind enabling and stabilizing activities compare with those of other activities? How might this weighting concept impact our ability to successfully achieve the cessation of conflict? So, it's a very complicated graph here. The y axis is the level of military effort, the x axis is Operation Order Activation, Operation Order Termination. And strangely enough, this is almost the form of a bell curve. Interesting. Global shaping activities, theater shaping activities, operation shaping activities, deter activities, seize initiative activities, dominate activities, stabilize activities, enable activities, revise, maintain, or cancel operation plan XXXX. And this is a notional joint combat operational model. The model depicts six general groups of military activities that typically comprise a single joint combat operation. The model applies to a large scale combat operation as well as to a combat operation relatively limited in scope and duration. It shows that emphasis on activity types shifts as an operation progresses. Operating or operation shaping activities may begin during plan development to help set conditions for successful execution. They may continue after the operation ends if the command continues to maintain an operation plan. Theater and global shaping activities occur continuously to support theater and global requirements. Specific theater and global shaping activities may support a specific joint operation plan during its execution. Notional Joint Combat Operation Model. And this is from JP3-0, Joint Operations. Required materials, JP3-07, Stability. Read I-1 to I-24. This reading is the official Department of Defense doctrine regarding stability activities. It will heavily inform most, if not all, stability activities through thought within the military. Ponder, how do the concepts involved here relate to those in the earlier JP3-0? To learn more, PKSOI, Strategic Lessons in Peacekeeping and Stability Operations, 2012. Read pages 1 to 30. Just post bellum, in war, resolution, in defeat, defiance, in victory, magnanimity, magnanimity, in peace, goodwill. Winston Churchill, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, 1874 to 1965. These Yank airmen beam broadly as they look out from their bomber. Is that a? No, that's a guy. He's got like a wicked curl. Brother and sister in the street of Kala Ishada, Kabul. Look at those beautiful little babies, man. Finally, it is important to remember that there is also always a human and moral element involved in warfare. Even at its termination, while the pursuit of war in a just fashion is important during its duration, for a successful conclusion to the war and to avoid the recurrence of conflict, all stakeholders must consider the moral and ethical dimensions of the peace being negotiated. While the potential aftermath of a war is to be considered in the decision to go to war as part of the jus ad bellum tenet of just war theory, the post conflict phase of war has generally been neglected by the just war theorists. However, it is garnering more attention over the last couple of decades. Now, if you think about it, just war is not talking about um, how to stop war. It's a just war, just not not just in terms of only war, but just in terms of like a justice war or a righteous war or a war that is justified, justified war theory. These things, these conditions must be met in order for us to maintain the moral high ground. We know moral high ground and morality. Uh, morality seems to be um, debatable and dependable. It depends, but that's more philosophical than kind of what this class is talking about. But that's interesting. That's interesting. This I noticed this warfare studies. It talks about just war, but in chapter 3 or in lesson 3, I feel like in the first 3 lessons, honestly, we haven't really hit on just war. Um, we talked about irregular warfare. We talked about what else? I'm blanking, but hold on. We talked about irregular warfare. Oh, I didn't put the titles there. We talked about gray zone. We talked about um, hybrid warfare, which is all terms under irregular warfare. We talked about um, decisive battle. Is it relevant or not? We talked about power or peer competition. Um, so decisive battle, decisive victory um, is also what we talked about in lesson 1. And so um, I don't know. I don't see just war. That's my comment. Maybe I like the just war theory. We didn't talk about it in any of our discussions. And so for me, what do I know about it? Not a lot. And see, finally here it says required materials. Williams' Just Postbellum, Just War Theory, and the Principles of Just Peace, 2006. Read 309 to 320. The article examines the insufficiently studied concepts of just postbellum. And like the narrator said, we don't really focus on the post conflict phase of war. We just focus on getting in the war, winning the war, and getting what we want. But the aftermath of that post conflict and framing the um, appropriate um, framework for the two opposing or the multiple nations to go forward. Like, how do you get a situation where we were at odds, we fought over it, we lost, and now we're just supposed to go forward and be good, even though we lost? I don't see how you move a people to that unless there's just a massive, massive loss of life. I look at Ukraine and Russia right now. They just Russia just captured a major. I can't pronounce the name. Luhansk. They just captured a major portion with the Severodonetsk. After they captured that, that failed. The Ukrainians withdrew from that. That was like the last district, if you will, before they captured what was comprising of the entire region. And I think they really only have to capture. Um, I think they said they own 75% of the Donbass region, and the Donbass region was kind of what they were going for. And so, essentially, what Russia is currently doing is redrawing state lines, and um, right now, there were some rumblings of, hey, just telling the the Ukrainians to kind of super peace. This was a while ago. Hey man, just super peace and just kind of like give them Crimea, and then just say how y'all can get Crimea, and we'll recognize those other breakaways. But that's it. But now, yesterday's deal is no longer today's deal, or yesterday's price is no longer today's price, and so that price just keeps going up. The more losses that are suffered, the more you have to give as the loser, and so Russia has taken a significant amount of loss, but um, now they're exacting a significant toll, and so it seems right now that they just announced Putin just announced in Newsweek that they're taking a operational pause since, hey, we have accomplished our objectives, and we're going to let those guys that just were important, uh, General so and so and Colonel so and so, we recognize you. You guys were significant in taking um, this last special operation, and so we're gonna let you guys just kind of hang out and relax and rest before we go forward and completing, I guess, the rest of the Donbass region. I guess that's their goal. And none of this stuff really makes sense until you start to open up a map. And I wish I'm going to learn how to do this where I could go from my face to the computer and bring up visuals. But if I had a map that I could show, on that map, it would have where, let's see, um, it would have where the natural resources are, because from what I'm understanding, this is all the political aim is it's about money. Um, and so me being a person of faith, so I always kind of relate this to faith things, and I see this as um, greed, and the scriptures talk about the love of money being the root of evil, and not money in and of itself. Money is okay, but the love of it, that greed, that that coveting, and so you have this one nation of people, Ukraine, that operated in this strategic. They had these lines where they um, they receive benefits from the Black Sea. So there's a bunch of every time you have some water, a body of water, you have um, trade. That's how we do. We have water that connects to larger bodies of water, and then this is how you can have um, ships going to and fro. And so you can have a lot of food, you can have a lot of other resources like oil and gas and all these other things. And usually they use gas pipelines. Um, but typically they're moving goods through land, air, and sea. And so Russia right now is looking to capture more space around the Black Sea. And so yeah, a lot of this conflict is surrounding um, being able to strategically position economically. And also, it's to create a buffer between um, the NATO states and the capital of Russia. You look at the Russia's capital. Let me see how close the Russia's capital is um, to Ukraine's border. Distance between Ukraine border and Moscow. See, a lot of people are looking that up. Okay. The Russia-Ukraine border is the international state border between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. How far is Krakow? How far is Moscow to Ukraine? Oh, all right. Well, let's get out of there. Uh-oh. I don't know. Oh boy. I don't know where I just ended up. Oh boy. Um, how far is Moscow from the Ukraine border? Why don't I? Okay, it doesn't say. Initial bearing on the course from Moscow to Ukraine is 206.85 degrees in the compass direction is south to southwest. Between Moscow and Ukraine, it is in the geographic midpoint between Moscow and Ukraine is in 261 miles. The shortest distance airline between Moscow and Ukraine is 523 miles. I'm confused with that whole um thing. But nevertheless, I digress. I like to go down rabbit holes, as it's already been stated. All right, back to the conclusion of the lesson. Wars are fought for political goals, and ultimately, all wars must end. However, the transition from war to peace, or even simply from conflict to stability, is a complex and difficult one. Navigating these difficult waters may be as important to the course of the 21st century as it was to that of the 20th. So it's going to be even more important. So is it increasing in importance? I think as the technology has increased, you have hypersonic missiles. That's kind of the new thing that Russia and China are debuting. You have all improved types of electronic warfare. You have it's kind of an old player to the game, but hacking. Even now, Russia is. I just saw something where Russia did some sort of um, Russia did some sort of, they claimed it was a hacking group and it wasn't a part of like the official state of Russia, but whatever, we know the deal. Russia did some retaliation and they hacked 70% of Lithuania's internet. And so we talk about hybrid warfare and irregular warfare. Is that war? Is that an act of war? If you DDoS, denial of services, I think that's what DDoS stands for. But if you're out here degrading and attacking my infrastructure, um, is that war? I feel like that's war. Now nobody was hurt directly. No shots were fired and no property was damaged. But I don't know that now. Stoker talked about not really feeling um, those terms of gray war and hybrid war. But hybrid war, the initially it was talking about actual war, not a kind of gray area, um, a gray zone conflict. It was talking about actual warfare, and I believe that is what is happening right now. And let me see if Lithuania is a NATO member. Let me see. Because President Biden said we're going to protect any member. An attack against one is an attack against all. In other words, all for one and one for all. Let me see. Lithuania NATO member. Lithuania joined the military alliance in 2002, along with two other former Soviet nations, Estonia and Latvia. There are currently 30 countries in NATO, 27 in Europe, two in North America, and one in Eurasia. What's the Eurasian country? And why are they even? Why are you here? Eurasian NATO member. Belarus. Oh, okay. Belarus is a member of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, Russia's counter to NATO, which is its own intergovernmental military alliance in Eurasia that includes certain post Soviet countries. Moldova has no plans to formally join NATO. The first train, okay, member states of NATO, okay. Eurasia and NATO countries, Turkey, 30 member nations. All right, yeah, let's just do this. What are the members of NATO? Bonus material. The nations are NATO members: the United States, United Kingdom, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Luxembourg, Italy, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Albania, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Montenegro, Croatia, Czech Republic, Poland, Estonia, Romania, Germany, Slovakia, Greece, Slovenia, Hungary, Spain, Turkey, Latvia, and North Macedonia. So Turkey is that one Eurasian nation that's a part of NATO. But this is so interesting to me. NATO and I mean Turkey and Russia are clearly allies. Um, and hmm, all right, peace and the process of that conclusion wasn't really that good because normally they're supposed to sum up conflict resolution and war termination, but we just kind of talked about um, it's paying attention. Just ad bellum is more important in the 21st century than it was in the 20th century. It didn't really say how. It kind of left that open up to interpretation. I agree. I agree. Peace is more important now than it was before, but peace is always important. So I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got for this video.